how much will home prices in Calgary crash this year? In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly that. Hey there, welcome back to Prairie Real Estate. My name is 𝗵𝗵𝗱, real estate agent in Regina, Saskatchewan, and that is my trusted assistant, 𝗵𝗵𝗍. This is my monthly Canadian real estate market update. We're focused on the Prairies here, so Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, Saskatoon, and of course, Winnipeg. But this wouldn't be a Prairie Real Estate video without starting off with another one of my terrible bad dad jokes. Why can't a nose be 12 inches long? Because then it would be a foot. If you have a terrible joke I can use in the future, put it in the comments below. Let's get into this month's Canadian real estate market update. The Regina real estate market, it's absolutely slowing down. More and more, I'm seeing offer dates failing where they just don't get an offer at all. You can't overprice your house, put an offer date, and expect it to sell. So as a buyer, you've got an opportunity right now to get into the market with a lot less competition than you've had for the past couple of months. Now, don't let that deceive you. It is still one of the busiest markets we've had in Regina, maybe ever, at least as long as I've been in the business. So let's dive into the stats and see what's going on. 362 homes sold in the month. That is the second best October on record, second only to last year. The next best year that isn't last year was 2023, where just over 300 homes sold. So this was an insanely busy October. This has been the busiest fall market Regina's ever had. We'll have to see what the winter is going to hold for sales. I'm thinking it'll still be pretty busy though. 447. That's the number of new listings, and as a buyer, this is what you want to see. We have really been struggling to get new listings coming to the market in Regina. Now, because we had all those new listings, that translated as well into a lot of the sales where buyers were able to actually find what they were looking for. There you go. See that big gob of slobber? Now, unfortunately, we're basically seeing the same problem we've had in Regina for the entire year. You can look active listings, and we started 380, which was crazy low. I've never seen a January like that before. When we got up to 609 active listings in July, and it's been trending down ever since. And that is typical this time of year. You're going to see less inventory as the year continues on. But I mean, we're probably going to see in November potentially less than 500 houses for sale, which is ridiculously tight. So if a house is sitting on the market right now in Regina, it's because it's overpriced or there is something wrong with it. Now, taking a look at the market balance stats here, months of inventory, 1.5 months again. So essentially, if you didn't list any new houses, there would be nothing left in about 6 weeks. Looking at the sales to new listing ratio, this continues to tighten up. Now, the good news is for buyers, the sales to listing ratio was 95 at this time. Last year, we're only at 81, which is still a crazy strong seller's market. The sales to active listing ratio is what you don't want to see as a buyer, and that is that continuing to tighten up compared to last year, which was a really tight inventory situation. This ratio is significantly tighter, again, representing a tighter seller's market. Now, again, all of these stats point to a really tight seller's market, but I'm telling you, what I'm seeing on the ground is different. I had a house that I listed recently that I thought for sure we were going to get 4, 5, 6, 7 offers on it and sell way over asking price, and that just simply didn't happen, even though we had a ton of showing. So definitely things are cooling off a little bit. And now let's talk about that benchmark price here. We see prices cool off generally in the back half there. Again, look at last year. Prices, they kind of peaked out a little bit later, September, October timeframe, and then we saw them cool off in November, December. So this is not surprising. This is what typically happens. We'll probably end the year with this benchmark price around $330,000-ish. So overall, we're going to see an increase in prices through not only just the course of the year, but year over year. Now, based on this commenter's post, I don't think they're buying a house in Regina. But you might be thinking about, that's why you're watching this video, right? And if that's the case, why aren't we talking about it? How about you book me in for a buyer's consultation so we can do exactly that? But wait, there's more. Even if you're not buying a house in Regina, I can handpick an agent just for you from my network of agents across the entire country. If you look in the description of this video, you can see a link to my calendar where you can book me in for that buyer's consultation. Now let's get back to the video. Similar to what I'm seeing in Regina, we are seeing a kind of an overall cooling off in the Saskatoon real estate market. Now, when you look at the stats here, some of these are literally record setting. The questions then become, is this more indicative of a longer term trend, or is it just things cooling off because the weather is cooling off? Let's dive into the stats here. So starting things off really hot, 455 homes selling a month, best month or best October ever on record for Saskatoon. I mean, just smashing the next best years last year, 444. That was a record setter. So just crushing last year's sales numbers. This is what is good news for buyers, more new listings, and also kind of the start of a trend here. So we now have not only double-digit increases in new listings for this month, but also the previous month. We're also seeing more sales because more stuff is coming to the market. That's part of why they had the record-setting month. There just simply was the houses to buy, which they haven't had for the last couple of months, years, you could argue even. Probably going to end around 7,200 new listings through the course of the year, which should put it on par for 2022. Kind of more what you would expect. Definitely not a crazy amount of new listings, just more in line with what a typical year would have. The active inventory trend in Saskatoon, that's the one that is the most interesting, I think, to watch of all the stats here. You can see we started the year down 55%, and then it got worse, got up to 61% in April. The good news is that has been tightening up. Good news for buyers, that's been tightening up, and now we're only down 33%. So we're starting to get back to kind of the 5-year average. Now, let's take 2017 here. It's the last month I have in this chart here. Definitely a much more buyer-friendly market. Things were a lot slower. 1,800 active listings, and we have 660 now. Looking at the market balance metrics here, months of inventory actually tightened up just a fraction here, 1.5 months of inventory, essentially same as what it was last year at 1.4 compared to any other year, way tighter. Looking at the sales to new listing ratio, this had been in a downward trend. This is you messaging me. How did it go? Well, I'm still recording, Gabe. There. So the market had been actually softening a little bit, and we saw here we went from September, October, we actually saw the market tighten up fairly significantly. Looking at sales to active listing ratio, that also, again, very minor change, but you would expect it to be getting smaller, meaning again, favoring more buyers. You can see we're essentially at the same ratio as what we were last year, and last year we know how tight that market was. Talking about prices now, a $10,000 drop in the benchmark price, pretty substantial, still up 5% year over year. This is going to continue. I don't think we're going to see $10,000 drops next month, but the overall trend is going to be down. That's just what you have this time of year, an overall slowing of the market. If I'm kind of guessing where things are going to end up, probably around 410, 415 is where the benchmark price is going to end the year at, and probably closer to 415 if anything. Let's talk about how hard the Calgary market is crashing. Actually, I want to know, what is the definition of a market crash? I'm curious, how much do sales have to drop or prices have to drop before we can officially categorize something as a crash versus a correction, etc.? Let me know in the comments below, because I think that'll be a fun discussion. Starting off with sales though, we're almost 1,900 homes sold in a month. What I like to describe it as is the Calgary market is trying to figure out what's the new normal. I don't think we're going to get down to those 2017, 2018 numbers, and I still don't think we're getting anywhere close to 22, 23 numbers anytime soon. It's somewhere in the middle. Probably gonna have another 3,000-ish homes that will sell this year, so Calgary end up with about 23,000 sales for the entire year, well below anything for the last 5 years. So again, just finding that new balance. New listings, this is what you want to see as a home buyer in Calgary. More inventory to choose from and not competing against every other buyer out there trying to buy the same thing. 3,200 new listings for the month. That is just barely down from last year, but it is down. Obviously, it's also up significantly versus the 5-year, but up till October, we've been trending in that upward direction versus the 5-year average. Now we hit October and it flips and it tightens up a little bit. Let's talk about active listings here. Just under 6,500, a fairly sizable drop off from the previous month. Now, that's a little bit to be expected. Closing in December, these are conversations I have with sellers all the time, is they're saying, hey, I'm not getting my price. I'm going to take it off and put it up because, of course, as sellers always think, next spring will always be better than it is today. And it probably won't be, but we'll have to wait and see. And because we had that fairly sizable fall off in the active inventory, back down to 3.4 months of inventory, well above anything recently. Looking at sales to new listing ratio, that actually shot up fairly sizably because they had a decent month in sales. And then sales to active listing ratio, that which again had been trending down. 1 month never makes a trend, but it stopped a trend, which was an overall decline. Wait and see what we get into next month. My guess is we'll probably see it soften as well, and it'll be well below anything over the last basically 4 or 5 years. You have to go back to 2020 to have a month with a similar sales to active listing ratio. Let's talk about prices now. So of course, people always want to talk about year over year numbers, and year over year, Calgary's down. What I always find interesting this time of year is looking where did prices start the year versus where did they end the year, because that kind of gives you that overall trend, the direction of the market for the year. You're always going to have a little bit of a bump, even in bad markets. So looking at it here, we start the year at $583,000. As of today, we're at $570,000 for the benchmark price, and there's still 2 more months to go here. If I'm a betting man, we'll probably see that benchmark price 555-ish kind of range, which would mean we'll see about a $30,000 drop just from the start of the year to the end of the year. And it would be down, if it does end up in that 550 range, 555, it's also going to be, you know, a $30,000 year over year drop. Compared to where prices peaked out in Calgary, you want to pick it basically June of 2024, $600 and almost $10,000. So that would be essentially a $60,000 drop from the peak. Obviously, a substantial correction. That's basically a 10% correction in prices in a year and a half. Now, if you were in Toronto, you'd probably be pretty happy with a 10% correction in prices. So I guess everything's relative. Edmonton home sales down 17% year over year. That's probably the headline you've been hearing the most. But here's where context really matters. Last year, Edmonton, best year ever for home sales, nothing even close. 29,000 homes sold. Just kind of looking at what's left here for the year, Edmonton will probably end the year with about 27,000 home sales through the course of 2025. So that would mean by far the second best year in Edmonton's history ever. The good news for home buyers in Edmonton, they're getting more houses that are listed for sale. So 3,300 homes new listed for sale a month. Looking at the chart here, nothing even close. Last 10 years, nothing even close to 3,300 listings for the month of October. So good news for home buyers. You've got more stuff coming to the market. And if you're only comparing year over year, you're going to say active inventory is up 30% in Edmonton. And again, factually correct. I like context in these numbers. I just want to go back here. Let's roll this back. Go look at 2020, 2019, and 2018. Again, in a time where the market was much more buyer friendly, but you can see, 7,000, 8,000 active listings this time of year versus 6,600. Looking at the market trend stats here, month inventory 3.2, same as the month before. Looking at the sales to new listing ratio 62, that was actually a little bit of a jump up. Probably more of a one-off if I'm guessing. And then looking at the sales to active listing ratio, you can see things peaked out here April, May at about 55, 56, and now we're down into that 30 range. This is interesting. We started the year $419,000 the benchmark price, and right now $419,000. I think there goes my prediction for Edmonton seeing the largest year-over-year price increase in Canada. My predictions video. You guys can all shame me in the comment section for that. And don't worry, I will have a new predictions video coming out. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that video. But looking at prices here, this is going to be the first year in quite a long time that we see a trend of starting the year higher in terms of prices than we ended the year. So assuming nothing else changes here, we'll see the prices in Edmonton start the year higher than where they ended the year. So the overall trend for the year will be a downward one, even if prices end the year up year over year, which they probably will. Okay, Winnipeg, I'll be nice to you. I won't wear my Rider jersey, even though the Riders are playing in the Grey Cup in Winnipeg. It's a little disappointing they don't get to have Winnipeg's locker room in that Grey Cup. And to give that one to Montreal is what it is. Now, when I'm talking with agents about the real estate market, They're telling me that the stats show a really strong market, but they, at least what they're feeling, is a little bit of a slowdown in the market. So let's dive into the stats and see what they show. So 1,350 sales in the month, really strong month for sales. You can see up versus last year, up versus the 5-year, compared to basically anything other than those 2 years. This was a record-setting month for sales. Now this one I had to double check, and it's new listings under 1,800 for the month. So we're down versus last year and down versus the 5-year. Looking month by month here, you can see every single month this year down versus last year, and up until the last couple of months, it's been down versus the 5-year. So 3,500 active listings right now, finally up a little bit versus the 5-year. Things were much more balanced in Winnipeg, especially 2019, favored more buyers there, a lot more inventory to choose from. But we're trending that direction, I think, in Winnipeg. So in the intro, when I talked about the numbers, here's what I'm talking about. So months of inventory, 2.6, seller's market. Sales to new listing ratio increased to 75, strong seller's market. Sales to active listing ratio, still 36. That still puts it well into a seller's market there. But agents are telling me things are softening a little bit there. So for buyers, a little bit of good news. Let's talk home prices here. Benchmark price, $378,000. They're in that kind of podium position to have the largest year-over-year price increases in Canada. Obviously, Quebec City's going to win it. Nothing's going to be close. Looking kind of overall, we're probably going to see prices end the year a little under $370,000. Still would be an overall trend up for the year based on where we started, and a fairly sizable year-over-year increase as well.